My name is David John Roche. I'm a composer and I am going to tell you about a piece of music I've written called Harm Reduction. It was commissioned by Uproar Ensemble, Wales's new music group, and it's just about on tour as I publish this video. We were in Aberystwyth rehearsing when I recorded this. Hooray! If you've heard any of my music, then it will come as no surprise that Harm Reduction takes a lot of influence from rock and metal music. I love the stuff, it's great. However, I should make it clear that when I'm talking about rock and metal, I'm usually referring to a specific type from South Wales in the mid-noughties. There was a great music scene in Wales at the time, with some of my favourites being bands like Funeral for a Friend, who were more local, and the Manic Street Preachers, who were massive internationally. Flash forward 20 years to now, and the arts in Wales are in total crisis. A huge number of closed, defunded, indebted and at-risk organisations and venues are hanging on by a thread. I think our inability to preserve, archive and remember important music from different times massively hinders our ability to argue its value. How can we talk about it if it's not in the public consciousness in some way? Gleaning the positives from different collections of music allows different communities to attach themselves to these legacies. It opens doors, it builds careers. So aside from just liking it a lot, I'm putting my rock and metal influence at the front of my work because I think I'm trying to show what makes it special to me. It's exhilarating, life-affirming, it's brilliant. I hope hearing this will encourage people to value and love music made in Wales. I am, however, very keen not to wallow in nostalgia, so I am thinking about the future when I'm using these materials. I'm thinking about new ways to implement them structurally alongside other music that I really enjoy. So, where do you hear this influence in my new piece, Harm Reduction? Riffs. There's one big riff in this piece, you hear it right at the start. The strings kick the whole thing off in the nice friendly key of D major. Writing in this key allowed me to use the open strings of all of the strings really easily. This is significant because in guitar riffs, open strings are used all of the time. This might seem superficial, but there are loads of riffs that use these kind of chunky double stop-ins. It's part of the musical language of rock and metal. It's what I'm emulating here. This core riff then starts off a train of ideas relating to rock and metal. You'll hear the reharmonization of this riff, a kind of left-hand speaker, right-hand speaker, power chords versus, sort of ostinato idea that you get a lot in rock and metal. Tight and crisp turnaround phrases at the end of repeated riffs. These change very frequently. Lots of drum kit-like percussion. The percussionist is set up in a little station with his wood blocks, tambourine, bongos and kick bass drum all around him. And lots of repeated figuration, ostinati, above chords. Like I was saying earlier, this is a really common feature split between the left-hand speaker and the right-hand speaker in a lot of recorded rock and metal. Some of these might sound like things that are common to classical music because I'm describing them in a way that communicates to people who like classical music. That's you probably who's listening to this. But rock and metal push these techniques to a level of precision, intensity and aggression that is alien to classical music. And this is what I want to capture. These aspects also tie into form. Classical music tends to be more developmental or perhaps ultra extreme in its repetition, but in rock and metal, small-scale repetition is used much more frequently. This is something I use in Harm Reduction, with 8-bar phrases being repeated throughout the piece, almost creating little verse and chorus structures within the composition itself. Forms within forms. It creates little moments within the piece. It's really exciting. Rhythms. My music is almost comedically quaver heavy, to the extent that I've written pieces about it. A piece called Semi-Quaver City 1,000 years ago, and a piece called Quaver Dreams and Quaver Nightmares, which is on tour the same time as this piece for Uproar being played by the Wales guitar duo. They're awesome, go and see it. In Harm Reduction, I thought it might be fun to do something more technically minded while not fundamentally changing the fact that 80% of the music will be quavers, or at least be driven by that pulse. So about halfway through the piece, you'll hear some broad, lower melodies singing out against a constant string of quavers. The whole section is this kind of weird Christmassy gauntlet. You have an initial section that's repeated twice, with frequently changing time signatures that help give the melody some irregularity and some shape. The second time this appears, the melody is slightly changed and appears in canon, joining together at the end of each formal unit, 8 or 16 bars or so. Straight off the back of both of these, you have a chorus type element that is more obviously festive. This switches between groupings of 2 and 3 quavers To me, this is that Stravinsky Petrushka or Firebird moment. It's also something that's influenced by Joan Tower's piece Petrushkates, vibrant, fizzy, fun, and, most importantly, almost all quavers. I think it's quite a fun way to disrupt some of the more standard melodic elements of the piece. It feels really exciting in the room. And it also ties in with this idea that almost all rock and metal music is recorded to a metronome. So you really do get this sense of like insistence that keeps coming. There's obvious parallels to more traditional post-minimal music, but that's not really where I'm coming from here. This is a kind of bludgeoning, an insistence, a constancy. This isn't the only moment of the piece that plays with rhythms, however. Rhythms, different ones. There's also a big piano solo that happens twice. Splashy arpeggios that remind me of Tchaikovsky, but probably look more like Beethoven. It literally looks like his fifth concerto. Stay metrically strict, but grow in size to create irregular time signatures. These irregular time signatures, beaten in one by the conductor, are then split equally into two halves to give simple, but conceptually unusual rhythms. In my head, I'm thinking of two things here. Firstly, the piano player Hiromi. She plays around a lot with adding or removing a single semiquaver in a bar, and Louis Andriesen's Woodblock Nightmare does Snellheid. He divides bars of 5/16 equally into two. This is punctuated with a bass drum that's a duplet over that bar of 5/16. Louis Andriesen also uses a massive bass drum, whereas I'm just using a gentle, friendly major scale. I think this is a good playful foil to a lot of the more rigid rhythmic material. It feels quite scrambling and difficult, but also articulates a sense of lightness, letting the performers sort of spread their wings a bit in terms of rubato and expressivity. But overall, I'm generally pushing for metronomic rhythms. As I said, that's something that's perhaps less common in classical music. People sometimes talk about internalized and responsive pulses to describe the difference, but the long and short of it is that most modern rock and metal, all of it basically, is recorded to a metronome and then digitally edited to be perfectly in time. So this is kind of what I'm after. That's where I'm getting this material from. It's the same with the riffs. It comes from that limited tonal language that forms rock and metal. It's about consistency, it's about intensity, and it's about precision and the excitement that these small repetitious elements bring, and how you can subvert and play with these small repetitive elements by adding little tags at the end of phrases, or by setting up something constant like a metronomic pulse and deviating from it. The end. Uproar sound awesome. Make sure you come and see this concert. If you're an ensemble outside the UK and you're looking to give the international premiere of this piece, then get in touch too. I've had a few this last year. It's exciting to set these things up. So come on, don't be afraid to reach out. It's going to be awesome. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.